Hello, everybody, and welcome to today's episode of Uber to the Pits. I am sitting here and joined by Courtney Crone. Courtney, thank you for joining me.
Yeah, thank you.
So, Courtney is a little bit different from the other guests we've had on there. Courtney, you are actually our youngest guest so far, and
Oh boy.
up and coming. You just turned what, 18 or
19.
just turned 19? Sorry, and fresh out of high school last year. So, Courtney, give us a little background. What got you started in motorsports?
I'd say my dad got me started in motorsports. By the age I could even walk, he had me on any type of anything with wheels at 2 years, 2 months. He had me on a bike, motorcycle at, two, a little Honda 50. And then, as they say, with age comes a cage. So at 5, I was in a quarter midget.
So, but you not only were you at 5 and a quarter midget, but you're also still on two wheels at the same time. Not your typical. You weren't really racing your typical two wheels. You're kind of taking the path of what a lot of sport bike and road racing motorcyclists do, and you're doing a lot of flat track or speedway riding.
Right. Right. Yeah, that actually happened a little bit later in my career. I did quarter midgets until I was about 9 or 10, and we came at a crossroads where we didn't have enough money to travel to all the big races around the U.S., but so we did pretty much everything we could do around the local level of racing. And you had to be 12 years old to race a Ford Focus midget, which that's what we wanted to do. So I wasn't old enough for that yet, and we finished quarter midgets. So my dad's like, "Well, what should we do?" And we'd been attending speedway races since I was born, and he had a friend tell him, "Get her on a speedway bike." So there we were. I got a speedway bike for Christmas, and we raced speedway starting. I was about 10, and I raced speedway till I was 14. And so that was a lot of fun, and that was a good time, and we did pretty well with that.
Now, before we get into the car stuff, because I come from, myself, I come from a motorcycle background myself. I did road racing on the streets, all the, road racing and stuff like that before I got into a race car. And believe me, if it wasn't for the push and motivation from a family member who had an automotive shop and was like, why are we racing motorcycles when we work on cars? We should be racing cars and let it transition. I'd probably still be racing two wheels. There's just something about it for me. I've always admired speedway racing. I've never done it. I always think it's fun watching those bikes get, completely sideways, inches apart from each other. And even crazier was watching the ice racers,
Right. Yeah, those guys are nuts.
especially with, the inch long spikes on their
Yeah,
tires and
big
stuff like
spikes
that.
coming at you.
So, and then, so when you're done speed racing at 14, I know then you got back into some, was it midgets or uh,
Yeah, so at 14, the time that I raced speedway, I also did a couple Ford Focus midget races, a couple on mainly on dirt, a couple on pavement. And then when I was 14, that's when we made the transition fully into dirt, and I raced a 360 sprint car, non-wing. And so that's when we made the full transition into cars, stopped doing speedway, and just focused on that.
and right around that time is when I actually first met you. Is when you were racing the dirt, helping design your suit for you and stuff like that. Um, then, because now you're racing, or you were racing before everything got shut down and red flagged. Uh, Formula 2000
We were doing Formula 4.
or Formula 4, yeah. But and then the years prior, you were doing another Formula class. How was it the transition from going dirt racing to Formula car racing?
For me, I made the transition. I was at 15 or 16 years old. I was doing a full season of USAC midgets on the West Coast and a full season of Formula car racing. Um, Being 15, it was a lot for me to take in.
Because you're going to school at the same time.
Right, and I was going to just a regular public school. So, I had a lot on my plate, but school was never um they always understood that I had a really crazy schedule, so that wasn't so bad, but just focusing on um dirt racing with a really big schedule and then throwing in not as many road races, it was it was a challenge for sure. Um Definitely by the end of the year in the Formula cars, I kind of got the hang of it, and so it got easier. But definitely in the first few, like, even tests that we had before the season and stuff, um, it was a challenge. But I always loved it. I love both types of racing, so um, it made it a lot easier that I also enjoyed doing a lot of the road racing.
Now, before I get into the next little part of talking about racing, what is your ultimate goal? What would you like to achieve? Luckily enough, you're still young enough that you have your full future ahead of you. Is
Right.
is there like a series? Is there a car? Is there a
Yeah,
level
I
you
want to
want to?
race an Indy car. Um, Even above and beyond that, I'd like to win the Indy 500. But the realistic goal is just to race as much as I possibly can and have as much fun as I possibly can doing it.
Now, being a young woman, and still a very man-dominated world. I know you have great mentors with Lynn St. James, and you've worked with other, you get to do other stuff with female drivers with the Women's Sports Foundation. And Lynn, who was a past guest a couple episodes ago, really talked, and I think it's such a great thing that she does. How do you respond being a young female in a male dominated sport, but yet there's still so much growth with the females in the industry? You have Pippa Mann, you have Catherine Legg, Shay Holbrook. There's all these other females that are up and coming and making names for themselves, whether it's in sports car racing. You have Samantha Tan. And so there's other women that are making the step and journey. But how have you found it being, in the industry as a young female?
I love it. I I think it's one of those things that the way you present yourself, um, being if you're a woman or if you have any other differential than a white male, um, it's just the way you present yourself to everybody else, and that's the way they're going to treat you. So, I've never really played the woman card too hard, but, just having, people mentor me like Lynn, and I've met quite a few other women race car drivers. It's really cool to see women coming up through the ranks and see them, doing a lot of different stuff. It's totally a thing now. It's
Yeah.
not like you're prohibited to be in the pits anymore like they used to do. Or so, if you want to do it. And so it's not for everybody. I think we definitely need to have the right women in motorsports. And I mean, Danica Patrick was a total badass on ovals and road courses, no matter what anybody says. So it's totally acceptable now, and I don't see a reason why, if anybody wants to drive a race car, why they can't. So
I mean,
it's
really, if you
one of
think
those
about it,
things.
as soon as the helmet's on and you're sitting in the seat strapped down, if you just glance at somebody, you can't tell if it's a male or female at all.
Right,
Um,
right. And a lot of people say, well, the car doesn't know you're a woman. Well, you're playing soccer. The soccer ball doesn't know you're a woman either. So it's
exactly.
it's just, It's just how you present yourself, how you present yourself on track, not only off track. Um, so it's a little bit of a game.
And so that brings me to my next question is I know last year and the year prior you tried to go for the W series. Um, you know, I I know that there's a bunch of women worldwide that go out for this, and there's only a select few. Um, I don't want to delve too deep into it. You know, you and I've talked a little bit personally about what's happened, but how do you view the W series?
I
Um,
I think it's a good series because it's all women like everyone says, but like everyone knows, but they don't single you to only race that series with just women. If you want to go and race F4 in Europe, you can go do that as well. If you want to do F4 here in US, you can do that as well. You can do any series you want. Um, there was a couple women that raced F3 there, but to get some time in the cars, they did F3 here in the US. So you can, it's really cool. They paid for everything for you to go over there, do the series. But at the same time, if you want to get your own sponsors and do something else to sort of train for it in a way, you can do that. So it's pretty open. So I thought that was really cool about the series.
cool. Um, so now with you, you also have something very special because your dad works in the vintage industry. He maintains a bunch of vintage cars for some very, very nice gentlemen. I've had the pleasure of meeting, all of his customers being at the racetrack and whatnot. And, you carry yourself the way your dad presents it. And, you come from a good family that way. And his customers represent that as well. So this year, you had a special opportunity to run some historic races in a vintage formula car.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. So,
And I know you growing up in the vintage, with your dad doing all this vintage stuff, you've always had a strong passion for vintage cars. I'd see you at the Monterey Historics, with a grin ear to ear, walking around with Lynn and other drivers, checking out the old Formula One cars and whatnot. So when you finally got your turn in the vintage car, what was it like?
oh boy. Yeah. That was so exciting because I've grown up around vintage racing my entire life. My dad preps and maintains vintage race cars for a living. So every morning I walk out to our garage and sometimes there's an Atlantic, sometimes there's a Formula 2 car, sometimes there's a Formula Ford. So it's really cool to actually see these cars in action, and especially the Formula 1 cars. It's the way those guys push those cars. It's really awesome to
Yeah.
watch. So, going to the Monterey reunion almost every year and seeing those cars. I've wanted to do it really bad. I've wanted to race vintage really bad, and all the guys are super cool and really fun to be around. And last year, I got the chance to drive Paul Fanner's Eldon, 1972 Eldon, at the reunion, and that was just crazy. I think there was 56 cars. It was by far the coolest week of racing I've ever had.
And how'd you do in that race?
We did for what we had. We did pretty good. We had the only fully unrestored Formula Ford there. So had the original steel wheels. I think the engine hadn't been gone through since 1998, and the Formula Fords now have about 10 more horsepower than they used to.
Yeah.
So they've really upgraded them, and so we had an original 1972 Formula Ford, and out of 56 cars, we got, I think it was 15th on the first day, and then the second day, we actually broke a stub axle in the right rear, and no one had a replacement one for an Eldon, so we unfortunately didn't get to run the big race on Sunday, but needless to say, it was so much fun.
See, that's still on my bucket list.
Oh
You
yeah, you
know,
have to do it.
I'd
You have
I'd
to.
love to find the opportunity to go in and drive like an old Group C GTP type car
Right.
Um, I'd love to race an old Formula One car, but I just think that being 6'3" in my size is a little tough to fit inside of it. But put me in an old IROC Porsche, uh,
Right.
old GTP GTU car, and I would have the time of my life. Monterey Historics is just that beautiful. I think the two events you have to get to sometime is Goodwood
Right.
and the Monterey Historics.
Yes, definitely. I haven't been to Goodwood, but I always tell everybody that the reunion, you have to go once.
Yeah. And just for people that don't know, Paul Fanner is the owner or the guy that originally started Racer Magazine as well. Super nice guy in the industry, and go subscribe to Racer, read their stuff online. It's great information.
Right. Yeah. Paul's helped me a lot, and I'm super fortunate he gave me the opportunity to run the Eldon. So if you're listening, Paul, thank you very much.
So once, what was your plan for the? What was your setup for this year before everything kind of got shut down?
Our goal this year was to race the Formula 4 US Championship. Looks like, that'll still happen. They did either postpone or cancel Road Atlanta, our first race of the season that was supposed to be happening last weekend. So our next scheduled race is June in Coda. So we're gonna make a charge at the F4 Championship this year, and I look forward to doing that with World Speed, and yeah, it should be really fun.
Now, do you have like a set timeline of, okay, I'm going to do Formula 4 for this year, Formula 3 next year, or do you think you're going to do like Formula 4 and then maybe trying to get into the Mazda Road to Indy or go F3?
Yeah, I mean, I think our the avenue that we're kind of on is the Formula 4 and then F3 and then kind of an Indy Lights. Now that they kind of have their own pathway with a scholarship to Indy Lights after F3, it's a lot more affordable for someone like me than the road to Indy. And you still hit up all the big tracks back east. So it's it's a good pathway. I'd say timeline wise, like by time, always say everything happens for a reason. So you never know if another opportunity opens up in sports car, you can go that way. So, um, motorsports, when you don't have a lot of, specific money backing you, whether it's your parents or just an individual, it's hard to have a clear pathway because you never know what will happen.
See, and
So I'm,
unfortunately for you, you're kind of in the wrong era that, you don't have you can't get the cigarette and alcohol money that was in the 80s and
right. That
90s.
was when it was good, right?
And that's when people would come up to you and go, "Hey, you're fast and a good driver. Will you come drive for us?"
Right. Yeah, that never happens anymore. But
Now it's, "Hey, you're fast and good. Will you come drive with us and bring a check for $75,000 for the weekend?"
right. Yeah, exactly. And or you're really good, So it's crazy. Trying to find, the right team to be with nowadays, and people that won't just use you for your money and this or that, but I'm super fortunate to be running with World Speed this year and VMB driver development. They've helped me out a ton in the past and helping me out again this year running F4. So
Yeah, you ran with
couldn't be
them
any
for the
more
last
grateful
couple
for
years
them.
as well.
Right. Yeah. I raced for VMB and World Speed in the Formula Speed class here in the Formula Car Challenge on the West Coast. So have a good relationship with them. So looking forward to carrying it over to the F4.
Now, for younger racers that are going through the schools, or, going to regular school and stuff like that, family time, all that stuff. How were you able to balance school, friends, racing? You already disappointed me a little bit by letting me know you grew up near a ski resort and
Yeah.
you don't ski or snowboard at all. But you know, a little's forgiven because you do race cars.
Yeah. I'm too
How
busy for that.
Yeah, how were you able to find that balance between everything and with the travels, the racing, trying to still kind of maintain a little bit of a teenager life?
Yeah, I mean, I didn't have your typical teenager life. I had a lot better life, I'd say, growing
Yeah.
up. And school was, I went to a regular public school all the way from kindergarten to graduation. Um, I missed a ton of school, but all my teachers always understood because I always did my work. I always either turned it in early or still turned it in, whether it was just taking a photo of it on the day and just sending it to them. I graduated with honors, so I got 4.0 GPA all through high school and middle school. So for me, it wasn't really that difficult because honestly, all my teachers thought it was really cool, and the principals and stuff that I raced. But at the same time, I still did all my work. It's when you're traveling, you can do your work in the hotel or do it in the car. So if you're committed, you can do it, and they totally understand. So that's kind of my take on school. Family life, both my parents knew that all I ever wanted to do is race, so they love it when I'm away racing and not taking up their time. So you
Yeah, plus
know
they don't have to worry being out partying or getting in trouble.
right, exactly. So I try to be as good as I possibly can. So they let me race. So
How was it in school when people found out what you would do? Like, hey, where were you, or what do you do up to? Oh,
yeah.
nothing. I'm going to Road America to go race a car. I'm going to Monterey to go race a car.
Right. Yeah, yeah. I actually never really told anybody I raced until about kids got cell phones and started to go on like social media. And all of a sudden they see that I'm racing, all over the country. And they're like, oh, whoa, I didn't know you did that. And I was like, yeah, maybe a little bit. So, so,
Keep it a little humble.
yeah. And so then finally, like, once you get to high school age, they're like, oh, you want to come hang out this weekend? I'm like, yeah, no, I got a race, I'm sorry. So
Yeah.
it's so I was always busy, so I never really hung out too much outside of school. I was always at a track somewhere doing something else.
Now, do you have any plans to continue education now, or?
Yeah, I've had some thoughts as to maybe doing some college classes here and there, just what would benefit me. I don't have any goals right now to go to a university or anything like that, but right now I'm super busy with work and racing, and just keeping that alive and doing what I like.
Yeah. So hopefully things, shape up and get back to semi-normal here soon, so that way we could see you back on the track and then making the push for Indy cars and going towards that Indy 500 goal. Um, what would be your biggest piece of advice to drivers that are trying to do something, kind of go through the same steps, excuse me, go through the same steps you are, going to school, trying to find that balance of racing and trying to be successful and moving forward, you know, because if you look at a lot of your photos, like you said, on social media and whatnot, you're on the podium quite a bit. For what the series you've raced, you've been successful, and
Right.
there's no doubt that we'll definitely see you progress and move forward because you have that personality, you're that type of driver, and you strive to succeed. And I think you can be a great role model to just younger females, younger kids, kind of going through the same steps you are, trying to find that balance of school and racing. What would be your biggest advice to them?
I'd really say surround yourself with people that you really trust. That is a huge part of it, and people that will make it fun for you, because once it once it becomes not fun, it's just not fun, and it's
It's a
almost like a
job.
chore. Yeah, it's like a job, right? Who wants that? So and yeah, surround yourself with people that you really trust, and just because 10 different people tell you 10 different things of which way they think your career should go, um, and you don't see it that way, just find someone that you really trust to um, really guide you and guide you through the ranks and everything like that. Because a lot of people will tell you, "Oh, you should have done this. You should do this. This is what you should do," and it's just a lot of noise. So, yeah, I say do what you feel is right in your own gut, and because that's who knows you best, and find someone else that's already kind of been through the ranks to help guide you. That's super important.
Yeah. No, I think I think you're very blessed being able to have a mentor like Lynn St. James who's been through the ranks. Like she mentioned in her podcast, luckily for her, she kind of started at a later age where she didn't put up with, as she said it, people's shit.
Right,
Um,
right,
and I think, you have other people like Shay Holbrook who would be more than willing to give advice. You have Pippa Mann still doing it, Catherine Legg, and they all know that they've been, Sarah Fisher, Danica Patrick, they all know they've been blessed to compete at the highest level and are willing to share that with other females. Look at Christina Nielsen in sports car winning GTT championships, and
right. Yeah, I mean, I'd say being a female, it doesn't even necessarily have to be another female that's kind of been through it. I lean on Lynn quite a bit for advice and what should I do and this or that, or her opinions on everything. But luckily, I found a couple different people to kind of ask for help, or kind of lean on and see their opinion on things. And sometimes you got to get a few different point of views. So there's Lynn being the woman driver, but then there's someone else, a man with a different opinion, right? So
well, not only that, but I think you also have such a huge opportunity, not just on the racer side, but your dad's customers are very successful businessmen,
right,
and even maybe not so much outside of racing, but just in life experiences or business experiences. Hey, how can I approach this on the business side, especially trying to go talk to other businesses about sponsorship or trying to get support that way. You
right,
have that huge opportunity with your dad's customers that could say, hey, this is the best way to approach this, or this is how we could handle this.
right. Yeah, I know the vintage crowd is just full of a lot of successful people. So um, it's um, it's good to yeah, get that kind of advice from those people. Like I said, you're right. Just a different eye on it, different advice for different things.
Yeah, people think there's money in sports car racing and Indy car racing. You haven't seen money until you've been to some vintage racing events.
Yeah, that's for sure.
There's some guys out there literally racing 15-20 million dollar cars like they're nothing.
Yeah, yeah, like they're back in the day. But that's what makes it so cool. And they're some of the most down to earth people you'll ever meet. So it's
Absolutely.
pretty awesome there.
Vintage racing is definitely one of those racing series where people have left the egos at the door.
Oh, for sure, for sure. I'd love to just have my own vintage car to do Formula Ford or something like that, and race those guys when I'm not doing something else. It's super close, fast racing. They're really good, and close racing, and they race those cars like you said, like they're nothing.
Now, I know that vintage car racing is very close knit community, very, will help everybody out. I know it's kind of like that in sports cars as well. Have you found that kind of the same way in, you know, the Formula series?
um,
Or is it a little bit more cutthroat?
it's definitely a little bit more cutthroat in Formula cars. Everyone kind of stays in their own separate tents or ways. I grew up in midgets and sprint cars, and everybody hung out afterwards, and everyone kind of helped each other out in midgets and sprint cars. And then I kind of got to the Formula car world, and that was a huge difference just to get used to the environment of coming from dirt and then coming to road racing. It was like two completely different animals, and I was like, wow, this is really different. A lot of go-kart kids and go-kart dads. I hadn't really experienced that since I was about 8 and quarter midgets, and it was pretty crazy to see the difference between that. So it was yeah, it was interesting.
Now, with you growing up in it, and eventually, I'm sure you know you'll get to a point where you may become a mom or whatnot. Is this something you're going to
No,
carry?
no, no.
I'm not talking anytime soon. There's a
Yeah,
possibility down the road.
never.
Hey, don't ever say never. I was saying never all throughout my 20s, and then my 30s hit. Now I have a soon-to-be 6-year-old, and we're out watching motocross this morning. Or it was funny. We're at a family breakfast one morning, and my uncle shows him a picture of a Ferrari 333 SP. He goes, my son's 5 years old. He goes, so Owen, do you know what type of car this is? He goes, it's a Ferrari. And he looks at him all shocked. He goes, how do you know that? He goes, my daddy has one. I have a little 1/18 scale Ferrari 333 SP.
Oh wow.
That's red, which is his favorite color. And so he knows all about Ferraris. He knows all about Lamborghinis. He knows all about Porsches. And he's going to make it very expensive on me. He wants to race motor. He wants to ride dirt bikes. He wants to race go karts. So
Oh boy, you got a handful there.
yep. Well, I wasn't much different as a kid. So, but back to it, like I said, I know you're still young. It's still a ways down the road. If it ever does happen, is this something you continue on with them?
No, no. Try to get. I mean, I've never even really thought of that, but I mean, yeah, I mean, it just depends. It's like, I'd definitely more apt to be involved in something like that as if like my sister had a kid.
Yeah.
I would definitely like take it and put it on a motorcycle or something, definitely without her permission. And so so yeah, I mean, anytime you can get a kid, even if I have a few friends that have nephews and stuff like that. I like to show them, bring them to the track. If they bring them to the track, I love showing them my cars. I still have my XR50. My dad taught me to ride, so I've had a few kids. I've actually, kind of helped on the bike, and so yeah, no, I love when kids get involved in racing, and they're usually super excited about it, and it's really good when they fall and they don't cry.
Yeah.
So it's like that's when it's like, okay, thank God there's a kid that actually enjoys it. And so yeah, no, I mean, yeah, getting involved with motorsports is a great thing. I think it teaches you to mature quite a bit sooner than really anything else. So no, it's a great thing to be around for sure. I
All right.
think you should
I just
you
want to make
should buy every toy you possibly can for your kid.
yeah. I just want to make a little side note, Jack. I'm not trying to push anything. I swear.
Yeah, yeah, you might.
uh, Courtney, I'm going to let you get back onto, unfortunately we're stuck in this California stay at home order, no work unless if it's essential BS. Luckily, we're able to get out and enjoy and stay in shape, and that's what I've been trying to do, get myself back into racing shape as much as I can. But I really enjoy you joining us today. Good luck in the future of your career. And
Yeah, thank you so much.
I want you to take this time right now. This is your moment to, if you want to share your social media, thank whoever you need to thank. This is your time to be your sponsor. Thank you plug. Don't worry, I won't be like the Academy Awards and start turning the music on at 2 minutes. But feel free to go thank whoever you want to thank, and share where people can find you and learn more about you.
Right. Yeah. First of all, I'd like to thank you for having me. This has been really fun. As for social media, my Instagram and Facebook is just Courtney Crone. That's with a C. Courtney, Crone. And yeah, I mean, I just like to thank everybody that's gotten me to this point in my racing career. Um, all my partners, myofunctional research and trench shoring has been a big part of my career. Um, Morgan Group and you know, the Women's Sports Foundation. We talked about Lynn a little bit. You know, I can't thank Lynn enough for everything she's done for me. Just, you know, everybody. I have a couple new partners coming on board this year. Uh, Fire,
Whoops, are you still there?
just a couple individuals.
Sorry, you cut out a little bit there, so it didn't come through. If
What
you
was that?
want to, you cut out there after your new partners. So if you want to mention who the new partners were again.
Oh yeah. Um, yeah, I have a couple of new partners coming on this year, and Frontier Fire Protection and Pac West. Can't thank them enough for what they're doing for me for this year, and World Speed and VMB for just believing in me for this season, and just everybody else. And look forward to the new season, and yeah, just getting with it again.
So, all right, guys, go follow Courtney Crone on Instagram and Facebook at Courtney Crone. Watch out for her in the next few years. She's definitely going to be a force to be reckoned with. And if you're in the pits where she is, definitely go up and say hi. You know, just again, everybody I've had on this podcast, I will stand by 100% with my word. Nicest people in the paddock. I wouldn't have them on here if they weren't worth talking to, asking questions, getting advice, pictures, autographs. Go do it. You could follow us at Uber to the Pits on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, ubertothepits.com, and our YouTube channel, Uber to the Pits, where videos are going to start. You know, I'm starting to pop up the old interviews. We're going to start putting the new interviews up on there as well. So check us out. If you guys have any questions, want to get in touch with us, reach us through our social media, or you can email me at info@ubertothepits.com. Next week, we will have Jay Braxton. We're going to be talking about Hans devices and head and neck restraints and how important they are, why you should be wearing them, and we'll go from there. So we'll see you guys next week. Courtney, thanks again, and you guys stay safe.